Well, hello, my dear friends. Justyn Smith here, and I want to thank you so much for click and play today. What a blessing it is to have you back on the channel. Today we are looking at 1 Chronicles 8 with the topic and title, Leaders Are Good At, and then I'll give you the following points as we begin to discuss this topic today. Leaders are good at. And I don't know if you are a leader of something or someone, but I pray that these points will help you today as maybe you are looking to become a better leader, especially for the glory of God. Number one, leaders are good at knowing when to make a move. Leaders are good at knowing when to make a move. It says in verse 6 of 1 Chronicles 8, these are the sons of Ehud. These are the heads of the fathers of the inhabitants of Geba, and they removed them. Now, as you look at that statement, they removed them, you must recognize that leaders are good at knowing when to make a move. And as we talk about moving or removing situations or people, letter A, we need to learn to trust God's leadership. Trusting God's leadership is something that's very important for a spiritual leader. How is God leading me? We're going to get to it here in 1 Chronicles in a few chapters. We're going to get to the reminder of King Saul living and moving in his pride. He wasn't trusting God's leadership, but he was trusting his own leadership. And so as we're talking about making a move or removing to a certain place, we need to make sure that this is God's leadership. Letter B, not only do we need to trust God's leadership, but we need to encourage others in the move. Encourage others in the move. And as we referred to a specific verse, it was very important to note the fathers and the leaders of certain tribes or heads of locations and people. As they would then remove people or move people, there needed to be encouragement from those who were the heads of the fathers or the leaders of the people. So as we trust God's leadership, we also need to encourage others in the move. Now, I'm thankful for people in life that are going to be right there with you in the move, and I'm thankful for the opportunities to encourage others that God has either given me to lead or who are with me in life, to encourage them, to show them why maybe this is an important move. Now, when I say the word move, sometimes you're thinking about a location, but it might be a move that you need to make for your household where it's not moving locations, but it's a need in your home to either take to yourself something or remove something from. You got to trust God's leadership, and you need to encourage others in that same move. Then letter C, allow people liberty to make their own decisions. When we're talking about moving or removing, not just locations, you need to recognize that sometimes there are those around you that God might not be moving. There are those around you that God might have other plans for. My mind goes to Aquila and Priscilla with Paul in the Acts of the Apostles, where at one point Aquila and Priscilla moved with Paul when he moved, and at another time or season they did not move with Paul. They stayed and they helped and they labored within the church that was within their own house. And so we need to trust God's leadership. We need to encourage others in the move, but it might be time to allow people the liberty to make their own decisions as to what God has for them. So leaders are good at knowing when to make a move. Then number two, leaders are good at knowing when to build. Now notice this next verse in 1 Chronicles 8. This is verse 12. And of course, it mentions a few different names: who built Ono and Lod with the towns thereof. Leaders know when it's time to build. Not only does a leader know when it's time to move and a time to remove, but a leader knows when it's time to build. And let me give letter A. It's not always time to build. For instance, maybe a new pastor comes on the scene at a new church for him, obviously, and there's a desire in his heart to make a move to a new location or make a move to build. It might not be the time to build. It might be the time to get to know the people that God has given you and you to them. It might be a time to embrace the reality of transition and wait a little bit. There's lots of things that need to get in order before it is time to build. It's not always time to build, but letter B, sometimes building is the only way you will grow. Now, I want to reference an illustration for an American church in American culture. When we talk about an American church with the comfortabilities that American people have, sometimes they say, and it's not always the case, okay? I realize we can't blanket this statement across every congregation in America, but it is commonly understood that when a church gets to a seating capacity of 80%, they say, okay, 80% full, that if new people come into that place, and sometimes those who are already there see that it is that full, they don't like to sit real close to anybody else, and they'll leave or they won't come back again because they're uncomfortable. I mean, I think of places that I've been on the mission field, and I realize that there are places in this world where you're shoulder to shoulder and you're not even sitting in a chair or a pew. You're sitting Indian style on the ground, moving to your knees when it's time to pray, no matter how hard the floor is. But again, you understand your crowd, you understand your culture, you recognize your congregation, and sometimes the only way to grow is to build. And as we consider that it's not always time to build and that sometimes building is the only way that you will grow, there ultimately needs to be, God, what do you want me to do? God, how do you want me to move forward? And I want you to think about this in all areas of your life and recognize that there needs to be a building process that's taken place because God is working on your life. Right now, you might need to be still and know that He is Lord. And at other times, you might need to add some things to your life as you are growing by the sincere milk and meat of the Word of God. It's time to build. And as we build as believers, we want to build for the glory of God. That leads me to a third thing that leaders are good at. Leaders are good at knowing who and what to drive out. Now, I want to give you the verse here in just a second, but we're talking about some things that leaders are good at as we look at this listing of people and some of the things that they did. Leaders are good at knowing when to build, and leaders are good at knowing when to make a move. But right now, we're seeing that leaders are good at knowing who and what to drive out. Notice verse 13. It gives you a couple names there who were the heads of the fathers of the inhabitants of that word, Aijalon, who drove away the inhabitants of Gath. Okay, when you think of Gath, you might think of Goliath. Okay, the inhabitants of Gath. These people were known to drive away those specific people, the inhabitants of Gath, because they understood that there could be some things about Gath that would not be good for them as God's chosen people. They knew when, and they knew who, and they knew what to drive away. It's kind of like if you have a garden, right? You're going to do things in your garden or set up things in your garden to drive away that which is going to tear apart your garden. That's why we say letter A, observe. Some situations need removal while others need reconciliation. When you think about the illustration of your garden, you recognize that in your garden there are different fruits and vegetables that are growing, but there are threats to the growth of that garden that you may have to take out or somehow build something that's going to keep them away. Sometimes a situation needs removal while others need reconciliation. And I mention that because in the day that we live in, we compare, yes, the battle, but we also compare the forgiveness and tender mercies of our God. Recognizing that reconciliation, being able to forgive and being able to make things right between people needs to be a practice of believers, all right? So we need to be able to carefully observe. But then when it comes down to driving away, we need to take courage to do what needs to be done. Take courage to do what needs to be done. If there's something in your household or something in your church that should not be there, you need to take courage to do what needs to be done, which leads me to letter C, similar but yet different. You need to see it through, okay? Don't trust the situation to remove itself. Things aren't just going to get better if you just sit there and twiddle your thumbs. You need to get up. You need to observe the situation. Does it need removal or does it need reconciliation? You need to take courage to do what needs to be done. It took courage for them to remove the inhabitants of Gath, but the inhabitants of Gath would not have been removed unless somebody saw it through. So you need to get up, observe, take courage, and see it through. Don't trust the situation to remove itself. These are three things that leaders are good at, and of course there are various things that we could point out and add to that. But right here from this passage that lists different people in different locations, we note that leaders are good at knowing when to make a move. Leaders are good at knowing when to build, and leaders are good at knowing who and what to drive out. My dear friends, it's been a blessing to have you here with us today on the channel. Thank you for listening to the duration of this message today. And I pray that whether you are a leader or looking to be a leader, that the message of the hour today would be something that has encouraged you in taking that step that you need to take for the glory of God. I trust that you'll join us on our next broadcast. If you have not liked or shared this video, I sure appreciate any of those likes or shares that you can give. And also, if you have not subscribed to our channel yet, we would absolutely appreciate it if you would click that subscribe button and click the bell button as well so you can be notified of our next broadcast upload. God bless you and have a blessed day.